Do you know what hurts the most? It's not the fall. It's the laughter that echoes behind you when you hit the ground. And for me, that laughter belonged to my own stepsister, the one who was supposed to hold my hand. Smiled when I broke. Hi. Before I tell you everything, I just want to say this. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you called family, if you've ever been mocked for your pain, this story is for you. Stay till the end. I promise, it's a story you'll never forget. And if it touches you even a little, please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you've ever been through something like this. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I was 15 when my father remarried. He was lonely, still carrying the shadows of my mother's death, and I wanted him to be happy, even if it meant welcoming a stranger into our lives. Her name was Nadia, and she had a daughter, Alina. Alina was my age, maybe a few months older. She had this confidence that filled a room before she even entered. Perfect hair, perfect skin, perfect everything. And when my father introduced her as my new sister, she smiled, a smile so flawless it almost felt painted on. For the first few months, I tried. I tried to be her friend. We'd sit in the same room, but her world was always louder than mine, full of phone calls, laughter, and people who didn't know how to say my name right. She'd borrow my things and never return them. She'd whisper about me when she thought I couldn't hear. And every time I looked for kindness in her eyes, all I saw was quiet competition. But I told myself, family takes time. Maybe love would grow between us like roots finding water. It never did. Things started changing when my father's business went down. Money disappeared faster than hope, and suddenly the warmth in our house turned cold. Nadia began blaming my father for everything, for not being enough, for not earning enough, for not giving Alina the life she deserved. And Alina, she learned fast. She mirrored her mother's tone, her sharpness, her quiet cruelty. When guests came, she'd sit beside my father and act like she was the good daughter, smart, graceful, well-spoken. And when the guests left, she'd look at me with that same painted smile. "You really don't belong in this family, do you?" she said once. It was such a small sentence, but it pierced deeper than any insult. I began shrinking inside my own home. I stopped eating with them. I stopped speaking unless spoken to. I started to disappear. Quietly. Slowly. Like sunlight fading behind clouds. Then came the day that changed everything. I had been preparing for my college interview, my first chance to earn a scholarship. I had studied for months, practicing my answers in front of the mirror, dreaming of walking out of that house with a new life. Alina offered to help me with my outfit that morning. She smiled, complimented me, even hugged me before I left, something she had never done before. But when I reached the interview room, the principal looked confused. He said, "You missed your first interview slot yesterday. We can't allow a second attempt." I froze. I had received an email, confirming my slot for that day, but when I showed it to him, he shook his head. The email had been edited. The date changed. I realized it instantly. It was Alina. She had logged into my laptop the night before. She had changed the date in the confirmation email. She knew exactly what she was doing. I walked home in silence, my shoes scraping against the road like whispers of defeat. And when I entered the gate, she was there, standing on the porch, holding her phone. She didn't say a word. She just smiled. That same flawless, cruel smile. And I broke. I screamed. I cried. I told my father everything. But Nadia defended her daughter, said I was jealous, that I was trying to ruin Alina's reputation. My father didn't know what to believe. He just looked tired. And that was the moment I realized. No one was going to save me. Not even the man who had once promised to protect me from the world. So, I stopped expecting rescue. I stopped begging for love, and I promised myself I would never let anyone see me fall again. For years, I lived like a ghost in my own home. I got a small job at a local cafe to support myself through evening classes. Every day I'd see Alina on social media, traveling, shopping, surrounded by friends. Her life looked golden, like a dream. Mine was black and white, routine, lonely, but real. I poured my pain into silence. Into studying late at night when everyone else was asleep. Into saving every rupee I could. Into believing that one day my silence would make noise, and it did. Years later, I graduated with honors, got an internship that turned into a real job, then another, and before I knew it, I wasn't that invisible girl anymore. I was building a name, step by quiet step, in a world that had once laughed at my fall. I never sought revenge. I just became everything they said I couldn't. One evening, years later, I got an invitation to a business conference. I was now managing regional projects, the kind of role I used to dream about. And when I entered the conference hall, I saw her, Alina, sitting across the table. She looked perfect, still, but her eyes had changed. There was something dim behind the makeup, a kind of tiredness you can't hide with foundation. She recognized me instantly. Her smile faltered. Mine didn't. We spoke politely, like strangers forced to share a moment neither of us wanted. She worked for a smaller firm now, one struggling for contracts. And the project she was bidding for was mine to approve. I didn't humiliate her. I didn't remind her of that day she smiled at my fall. I simply did what she never could. I stayed professional, kind, graceful. But as the meeting ended, she stopped me near the door. Her voice was soft, trembling. "I used to envy you," she said. "I thought if I could break you, I'd feel stronger. But watching you now," her eyes filled with tears, "I realize I only broke myself." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I felt no anger. No hate, just peace, because I had already won. Not by destroying her, but by becoming untouchable. People think revenge is loud, that it comes with shouting, or grand gestures, but it's not. Real revenge is silence. It's the calmness that comes when you no longer need anyone's apology. That night, I walked home under the city lights, feeling lighter than I had in years. I wasn't that girl who fell anymore. I was the woman who rose, and maybe that's why Alina cried. Because sometimes, watching someone rise after you tried to break them is the kind of mirror that no one wants to face. Do you know what I learned about pain? It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, in quiet moments, when the world forgets you exist. That's how my second chapter began, in silence. After the fall, after the betrayal, after the laughter faded into memory, I was left with nothing but the echo of my own thoughts. I thought I'd never heal. But healing doesn't ask for permission. It just starts when the soul can't take the weight anymore. Before I dive deeper, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from ashes, if you've ever had to teach yourself how to breathe again when nobody believed in you, this part of my story is for you. Stay with me till the end, and if it touches your heart, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that their pain has meaning too. Now, let's continue. After Alina ruined my chance at the scholarship, I became invisible in that house. Nadia treated me like an unwanted guest, and my father, my once strong, loving father, became a shadow of himself. He avoided confrontation. He avoided me, and that silence between us grew thicker than any wall. I'd sit by the kitchen window sometimes, watching the light fall on the floor. It's strange how the sun could still shine when everything inside you feels dark. But maybe that's how hope hides itself. Quietly, Alina had won. She had the attention, the friends, the comfort. I had nothing, except my determination. I started working extra shifts at the cafe after school. The owner, an old man named Yusuf, noticed how tired I always looked. One day, he said, "You know, strength doesn't always come from fighting others. Sometimes it comes from fighting the urge to give up." That line stayed with me. I wrote it down on a small piece of paper and taped it above my bed. Every night before sleeping, I'd stare at it and whisper, "Don't give up." The next few years were slow and hard. I didn't have money for fancy clothes or outings like Alina. While she posted pictures from dinners and parties, I was memorizing books by candlelight when electricity failed. But I didn't envy her anymore. Somewhere inside me, something was changing. I began to see life as a quiet competition, not against her, but against who I was yesterday. When I finally graduated, I didn't have anyone cheering for me in the crowd. No flowers, no applause. Just me, holding my certificate like a lifeline. But in that small moment, I felt something new. Freedom. After graduation, I got an internship at a small design firm. It didn't pay much, but it gave me purpose. Every design I created felt like a piece of myself finding color again. I'd stay late in the office, soaking in the hum of computers and the faint smell of coffee. That place became my sanctuary, and slowly, people began to notice my work. My manager, a woman named Sarah, told me one day, "You've got something rare, quiet ambition, the kind that doesn't scream, but never stops walking." She offered me a full-time job within months. I remember walking home that evening, the wind brushing against my face, and for the first time I didn't feel small. I felt seen. Back at home, things were falling apart. My father's health was worsening. Nadia blamed stress, but we both knew. Guilt was eating him alive. He saw the truth now. He saw the way Alina treated me. But by then, the damage was done. Years of silence couldn't be repaired overnight. One night, he called me into his room. He looked weak, fragile, older than I remembered. He said, "I failed you, my daughter. I let their lies drown your truth." "I'm sorry." Those words broke me. Not because they hurt, but because they came too late. I held his hand and said softly, "You don't need to say sorry, Papa. You just need to rest." He smiled. A small, tired smile. And 2 weeks later, he was gone. The house felt emptier than ever. After his death, Nadia changed completely. She became colder, more distant. And Alina, well, she moved on as if nothing had happened. No tears, no remorse. Just new clothes, new people, new distractions. When the will was read, I didn't expect anything. But my father had left something small for me. A savings account with just enough to start a new life. It wasn't much, but it was enough to leave that house, enough to breathe again. I packed my bags quietly one morning. Nadia didn't say a word. Alina watched from the staircase, her arms crossed, her eyes cold. And just as I reached the door, she said, "You'll never be more than what you are, the broken girl who everyone left." I turned around. And for the first time I smiled. Maybe, but at least I never had to step on someone else to feel whole. Then I walked out. That was the day I stopped being the girl who fell and started becoming the woman who would rise. I moved into a small apartment in the city. It wasn't much, just a single room with cracked walls and flickering lights. But it was mine. Every sound in that place belonged to me. Every morning felt like a promise. I worked harder than ever, climbing from designer to project lead within 3 years. People started recognizing my name, not because of where I came from, but because of what I created. And yet, even with all the success, a part of me stayed humble, quiet, because I knew what it felt like to have nothing. And I never wanted to lose that gratitude, but fate. It has a strange way of bringing the past back to your doorstep. One afternoon, I was attending a corporate networking event. A woman approached me, nervous, hesitant. When I looked up, it was Alina. She looked different. Not the radiant, confident girl I remembered. Her eyes were swollen from lack of sleep, and the smile that once mocked me had vanished completely. She had lost that shine, the one that came from believing the world revolved around her. "Can we talk?" she asked. And even though part of me wanted to walk away, another part whispered, "Listen." We sat in a corner. She looked down at her hands and said, "I don't know how to say this, but I'm sorry." Her voice trembled. For what I did, for what I said, for everything. For a long moment I didn't speak. I just looked at her and realized that forgiveness isn't always about others. Sometimes it's about freeing yourself from the poison you've carried too long. So I said quietly, "I forgave you a long time ago. Not for you, but for me." She began to cry. Not the dramatic kind, but the kind that comes from years of regret. And in that moment I saw it, the karma she had built for herself. She didn't need punishment. Life had already given her enough. When she left, I sat there for a while, staring out the window at the city lights. I thought about every fall, every wound, every lonely night I spent wondering if I'd ever be enough. And suddenly it all made sense. I had to fall, so I could learn how to rise. I had to lose, so I could learn what truly matters. and I had to be broken, so I could rebuild myself into someone stronger, softer, and infinitely wiser. People often ask me, "Don't you wish things were different?" And I tell them, no. Because if Alina hadn't smiled when I fell, I might have never learned how to rise on my own. They say life has a way of balancing itself, quietly, poetically. And sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right. Because when I finally rose, she didn't just see my success. She saw everything she could have been, if only she hadn't tried to break me. There's a certain kind of silence that comes after victory. Not the loud, cinematic kind people imagine, but a quiet, almost sacred calm. That's what my life became after that day with Alina. Quiet, steady, and peaceful in a way I never thought possible. But peace doesn't come all at once. It arrives in moments, like the first morning you wake up without feeling heavy, or when you smile without forcing it. That's how healing began for me. I wish I could tell you it was easy, that once I forgave Alina, the pain just vanished. But the truth is, my forgiveness isn't a clean wound. It's messy. It's remembering everything that broke you, and choosing not to let it control you anymore. Some nights, I still dream of that house. The echo of my father's voice. The way Nadia's perfume lingered in the halls. Alina's laughter when I was crying in my room. It all feels like another lifetime now. A chapter that closed, but left fingerprints on every page that followed. A few months after that encounter with Alina, I received a letter, hand-delivered to my office. When I saw her name on the envelope, I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to open it, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe compassion, made me do it anyway. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper. Her handwriting was shaky, uneven. "I'm leaving for another city tomorrow," it read. "I need to start over. I know I don't deserve your kindness, but I wanted you to know that your strength taught me something. You didn't just survive, you became someone I wish I could be. I hope one day I'll find that peace too." I sat there for a long time, reading those words again and again, not because I missed her, but because I realized how powerful healing can be when it comes full circle. The girl who once laughed at my pain was now learning from it. Maybe that was life's poetic symmetry, the same kind that makes sunsets follow storms. The following years were the best of my life. I started my own design firm. Small at first, then growing beyond what I could have imagined. My story, my resilience, became the foundation of my work. I didn't just design spaces, I designed peace. Every project I took on felt like reclaiming a piece of my stolen childhood, turning pain into art, loss into creation. And people noticed. Clients would tell me, "There's something emotional about your work, like it breathes." I'd just smile and say, "It does. It's made from pieces of a heart that refused to die." But life has a strange way of testing you when you least expect it. One evening, while finalizing a major project proposal, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. When I answered, the voice on the other end made my chest tighten. "Is this Ms. Amina?" "Yes, it is. This is City General Hospital. I'm calling regarding a patient named Alina. You're listed as her emergency contact." For a second, I couldn't breathe. I hadn't spoken to her in over 2 years. "Emergency contact?" I whispered. "Yes, ma'am. She asked for you." When I reached the hospital, I found her lying in a hospital bed, pale, frail, nothing like the confident girl I once knew. She had been in an accident. Her left arm was fractured, and there were stitches above her brow, but her eyes were the same, still deep, still searching for something she couldn't find. When she saw me, she smiled weakly. "You came," she whispered. "I almost didn't," I admitted. She let out a soft, broken laugh. "That sounds like you." We both stayed quiet for a while. The only sound was the soft beeping of the machines and the rain tapping against the window. Finally, she said, "I don't deserve your forgiveness." And I said, "Maybe not. But you deserve a chance to forgive yourself." Tears filled her eyes. "I tried, Amina. I really tried. But every time I close my eyes, I see the look on your face that day, when you left. I see everything I ruined." Her voice cracked. "I thought if I destroyed you, I'd finally feel like I belonged. But all I did was destroy myself. I took her hand gently, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I just felt peace. Then stop trying to be who you were, I said softly. Start being who you want to become. She closed her eyes, and I saw a single tear roll down her cheek. It wasn't guilt anymore. It was release. That night when I left the hospital, I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood that closure isn't always a moment. Sometimes it's a choice. A few weeks later, I received another letter from her. This one was shorter. Thank you for coming. It gave me the strength to finally start living honestly. You taught me more than you'll ever know. That was the last time I heard from her, but I didn't need to hear more. I knew she was on her own path now. And maybe, for the first time, she was walking it with sincerity. People often romanticize revenge. They think it's about payback, about seeing others suffer. But true revenge is becoming so whole, so peaceful, that the people who tried to break you can no longer reach you. They see you, and they realize they never really had power over you, not even for a second. Alina didn't just cry when I rose. She understood why I rose, because I stopped fighting her and started fighting for myself. Years later, I was invited to speak at a women's conference. The theme was Rising from the Shadows. When I stood on that stage and looked at the crowd, hundreds of women listening, nodding, some even wiping tears, I felt something indescribable. It wasn't pride, it was gratitude. Gratitude that every fall, every betrayal, every sleepless night led me to this moment. I told them, pain can either break you or build you. It depends on what you do with it. And if someone ever smiles when you fall, let them. Because when you rise, they'll have no choice but to remember your strength. The crowd erupted in applause, but all I heard was a quiet voice inside me whispering, "You did it." Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that little girl who used to cry herself to sleep while her stepsister laughed in the next room. I wish I could hold her and tell her, one day you'll smile again. One day your pain will be your story, and that story will help others heal too, because the truth is, falling isn't failure. Staying down is, and rising again. That's how we rewrite everything they tried to erase. So yes, she smiled when I fell. But when I rose, she wept for everything she lost in trying to take me down. And me. I just smiled, quietly, peacefully, finally free.